Councillor Shields.
Thought I ought to start it off, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This would have to be one of the most vital decisions this council will be making in, well, at least the 16 years I've been a councillor. It is vital because the very essence of Dubbo is at stake. It's vital because the very money in which we use to operate this council to provide services is at stake. Now, when we talk about money and talk about our budget, people don't quite understand that we're a council that only just gets by. And the idea of merging Dubbo City Council with Wellington Council is essentially going to mean that Dubbo ratepayers will be subsidising the huge area which is Wellington and the huge huge infrastructure backlog which is Wellington. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to point out that both councils are against this merger. Every councillor in both councils have voted against this merger. Residents in both these areas are against this merger. The current poll on council's website, 78% against and 22% for the merger, with over 1,300 responses. That number of responses gives only a 3% error rate. In mid-2015, council poll showed that 83% were against the merger with any other council. Wellington residents are against the merger, and further, a Wellington council poll showed that if they were forced to merge, a high percentage of residents preferred to merge with Orange rather than Dubbo. 38% to 35% prefer Orange than Dubbo. Most of which remaining preferring to merge with Mid-Western. So there's a huge majority of Wellington people that will prefer to go elsewhere than Dubbo. At public inquiry meetings, 93% of speakers at Dubbo meetings oppose the merger and 86% at the Wellington meeting. A show of hands at one Dubbo meeting showed unanimous support against the amalgamation. Mr. Mayor, it's quite clear the people of Dubbo and the people of Wellington have said very, very clear that they do not want this merger to go ahead. Mr. Mayor, another thing that greatly concerns me is the loss of political representation for Wellington people. We know how small the Wellington population is compared to Dubbo. The idea that this council chamber will be representing an area like Mumble is almost absurd. It is so far away, and I doubt any councillors in this room would have any real understanding of the people of of the needs of the people of Mumble. I certainly don't. The idea that the people of Mumble and the people of Wellington will get any significant representation in this council chamber is absurd as well, because their population just simply isn't there to get any significant numbers in this room. Indeed, I'd argue it's probably likely that Wellington won't even get one representative in this council chamber after a general election. We also must look at the loss of jobs and economic impact on Wellington. We know the reason why the state government is putting Wellington into Dubbo is because Wellington is not viable. Wellington is doing it tough financially. Well, that means that jobs will inevitably be lost in Wellington. More administrative tasks and more things will be done from the Dubbo council chambers, which would essentially mean less jobs in Wellington. Now, I'll tell you what, Mr. Mayor, for a town that is doing it incredibly tough, which is Wellington, that's getting slapped around left, right and centre every day when it comes to their social problems, the last thing the town of Wellington needs is to lose jobs. And essentially, a merger will mean the loss of jobs. Indeed, it will be pretty much the reading of the last rites to Wellington to be merged with Dubbo. Mr. Mayor, it also concerns me that the differences in rating models between the two councils are so different now, who knows what we'll end up with. Farmland rating inequity where Wellington farmers pay much higher rates than Dubbo. Difficulty in having one farmland rate. For example, 25% of rating assessments in Wellington are farmland, where only 4% of rating assessments in Dubbo are farmland. In the current Dubbo LGA, the village residents often comment that they would like to see more money spent on village areas. Currently, villages are subsidised by Dubbo city ratepayers to the rate of approximately 2-to-1 rates paid per village residents compared to the amount spent on the villages. But an amalgamation would see less money available for our villages. The 10-year ceiling program that Councillor Moore introduced to get places like Ballymore, Yamundry, Wongarvan, which in the coming few years is going to reap great benefits to these villages, will inevitably come to a halt because this new entity, this Dubbington, will have all sorts of different priorities all over the place. Mr Mayor, this merger does not make sense. It makes sense for massive reform of local government. Indeed, there's no one in this chamber who doesn't argue that reform of local government and for Dubbo to assist our smaller councils. No councillors arguing that everything's all right here, don't look away, nothing to see. But we are arguing that the proposal put on this table is wrong. It does not suit our ratepayers whatsoever, Mr Mayor. That's why I support this submission. I wholeheartedly support this submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shields.